All right, you are live. Let's make it happen. So today I was at the beautiful Vancouver Art Gallery and I saw some beautiful art. And I came across one of the Renaissance artists, Donatello. I think I've heard about him before. I heard of him before, but never looked into his story, his art. So today we're gonna check that out. All right, Donatello. Here he is. Donatello, very angry man. Let's see. Let's see. He has some beautiful sculptures. Born Donato. I believe he's Italian, so let's do the Italian thing. Donato, Donato di Nicolo di Beto Bardi. Donato di Nicolo di Bardi, around 1386 in Florence, Italy, is celebrated as one of the foremost sculptors. Sculptures or sculptors? I think sculptures would be the art, and sculptor would be the profession of the early Renaissance. His innovative techniques and expressive forms significantly influenced the trajectory of Western art. Very interesting. Also, right now the weather over here is beautiful because it was actually really, really bad, just raining all day, very gloomy, and now suddenly it's sunny. So I'll try to end the stream in 2 hours and then we'll head out for a walk. All right. Early life and education. He was the son of Niccolo di Beto Bardi, a wool carder, which placed him in the burgeoning bourgeois society of Florence. I think it's bourgeois, bourgeois society of Florence. His artistic journey began with an apprenticeship in stone carving around 1400. So 1386 born, 1400 for the first apprenticeship, where he honed his skills under established masters including Lorenzo Ghiberti. Whoa, Donatello's oeuvre. Oeuvre, I think, means work. Includes a variety of materials and styles, showcasing his versatility. Marble sculptures, his early works such as Saint George 1417 and Saint Mark 1415 display a profound understanding of human anatomy and emotion, marking a departure from the more rigid medieval styles. Okay? Human anatomy and emotion, marking a departure from the more rigid medieval styles. Bronze sculptures. The bronze David completed around 1440. So 1400 he started. After 40 years, he completed his sculpture, the most popular David. Do we have David here? I don't think this is David. This is not David. Okay. Is notable for being the first freestanding nude male statues since antiquity. This work exemplifies Donatello's mastery of form and his innovative use of contra- contrapposto, creating a sense of movement and life. Hmm. Contrapposto. Shia- Schiacciato technique. Is it Schiacciato or Schiacciato? He developed, let's say, Schiacciato or Schiacciato. He developed a unique relief technique called rele- rilievo, rilievo schiacciato, or flattened relief, allowing for intricate depth and perspective in his sculptures. Later career from 1443 to 1453. Okay, Donatello worked in Padua, where he created the monumental equestrian statue of Gata Melata, Gata Melata, further solidifying his reputation as a master sculptor. He returned to Florence later in his life, continuing to work for the Medici family. Medici family was the powerful family with a lot of money who basically kind of gave a lot of money towards these art workshops where a lot of Renaissance artists came about. A lot of money. They wanted to spend it on art, and they gave it away to a bunch of art workshops, also called atelier. And that's where this was one of the, let's say, the boost that got Renaissance, that kicked off Renaissance period on various projects, including dramatic reliefs for the pulpits at San Lorenzo. Hmm. Continued his work for Medici family. I believe even Da Vinci, Leonardo da Vinci, worked for the Medici family on various projects, including dramatic reliefs for the pulpits at San Lorenzo. Legacy. Influence extended well beyond his lifetime, inspired subsequent generation of artists, including Michelangelo and Raphael. His innovative approaches to form, emotion, and perspective laid foundational principles for Renaissance art. Passed away 1466. Okay. So born 1386, passed away 1466. So passed away at 80 years in Florence, leaving behind a legacy that continues to resonate in the art world today. Very interesting. Okay. Where should we start? Mm-mm-mm. I believe let's start with this. I'm actually curious if we have some quotes. Quotes from Donatello. Let's see. Attributed to Donatello from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise. Oh no. On pizza. Do you like penicillin on your pizza? Reflects Donatello's quirky personality, a love for pizza, a recurring theme. I know the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie, all the four turtles, whatever turtles, they were all named after Renaissance art. So Donatello, Michelangelo, I believe there is the Da Vinci. Maybe although I doubt most of shadow hunters get a tattoo of Donatello from the. Okay, wow. I don't know. I just thought there would be more to it. To the ooze to know us. Actually, let's quickly check. Uh, uh, what are names of all the turtles in Teenage? What's the movie called? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle series. Okay, so we got Leonardo, often referred to as Leo, leader known for his discipline and swordsmanship, wielding two katanas. Donatello, commonly known as Donnie, Michelangelo, and Raphael. Raph, Mickey, Donnie, Leo. The genius of the group, he's skilled in technology and innovation, using a bow staff. Michelangelo, fun living and carefree turtle, he wields nunchaku, and is known for his humor. Strong, and then we have Raphael, Raph, strong and temperamental turtle. He uses a pair of sai and is known for his rebellious nature. Nice. I remember watching the series way, way back. All right, this photo doesn't load. All good. Quickly check the stream. We are good. Okay, now quotes from Donatello, the Renaissance artist. Do we have anything? No direct quotes from Donatello, the Renaissance artist. As a sculptor from 15th century, it's rare to have preserved direct quotations from artists of that era. We do have some information about how others view Donatello and his work. Giorgio Vasari, a 16th century artist and biographer, said of Donatello's work, "The world remains so full of Donatello's work that it may be said with confidence that no artist has ever produced more than he did." Wow. Hmm. The world remains so full of Donatello's art. And Picasso came way later after that. So maybe Picasso was the one who kind of uh, beat Donatello in just the number of art produced metric. Vasari also described the impact of Donatello's early work, especially the St. George sculpture. There is a marvelous suggestion of life bursting out of the stone. There's a marvelous suggestion of life bursting out of the stone. An anecdote describes his intense approach to his work. The prophet Habakkuk, 1423 to 25, furiously exclaimed to his creation, "Speak, damn you, speak." Ooh. So he was basically known to make art that was kind of, I think we kind of read over here. What did they say? Being a sense of moment of life, contrapposto, or contrapposto, which is basically creating a sculpture in kind of a movement kind of way, kind of a sculptor that is in action, and with a lot of depth, a lot of realist, looks very real, and also in a kind of movement that creates a sense that this is alive. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. His early works, St. George and St. Mark, display a profound understanding of human anatomy and emotion, marking a departure from more rigid medieval styles. Okay. Okay. Let's see. First, verify this. So, what is the total number of art produced by Donatello? Let's see. Let's see. We got. Did we have something over here? I don't know. Is it Saint Mark or Saint George? We don't know yet. Let's see. No precise total number given for all the artworks produced throughout his career. However, we can infer that prolific artist created numerous sculptures, reliefs over his long career spanning several decades. Giorgio Vasari will remain so full of Donatello's work that may be said with confidence that no artist has ever produced more than he did. Worked in various materials, including marble, bronze, and wood, creating sculptures, reliefs, and other artworks. He produced several famous works, including multiple versions of David, statues of saints, prophets, and biblical figures, as well as reliefs and architectural sculptures. Completed major commissions for churches, cathedrals, and prominent families like the Medici. Works span from his early career in the 1400s to his later years in 1460s, indicating a long and productive artistic life, likely numbering the dozens, if not hundreds, of individual pieces. Hmm. Okay, let's see now some of his artwork. Donatello St. George. So, this was one of the early works. Let's see. I just saw St. George today at the museum I was at. So, I think I saw an image that pretty much looked like this. St. George. Hmm. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. Significant marble structure created between 1415 to 17 for the Orson Michel Church in Florence. Commissioned by the Guild of Armorers and Sword Makers, Arte de Corazze e Spadai, for their niche at Orson Michel. Depicts Saint George, the patron saint of the Armorers Guild, as a young, brave, and determined warrior in armor. Originally placed in an external niche of Orson Michel, now housed in the Bargello Museum in Florence. Considered one of the Italian Renaissance's first freestanding statues reviving classical techniques. Saint's posture suggests readiness and immobility, reflecting Florence's political climate at the time. Hmm. Readiness and immobility. Interesting. Donatello skillfully portrayed emotion in the St. George's face, showing intense concentration and resolve. Intense concentration and resolve. Technique: while fully clothed, clothed, the sculpture conveys a sense of a muscular body underneath. That's true. The forearms look big. The arms look very full. The saint's stance is not in contrapposto, but his weight is distributed on both legs. Hmm. Left parts of the marble rough to create interesting effects when lit from below. When lit from below. Is he talking about these rough? Hmm. Below the statue is a marble relief depicting St. George slaying the dragon. Relief is one of the first examples of central point perspective in sculpture. Use his relievio schiacciato flattened relief technique, creating an illusion of depth. Okay. Giorgio Vasari praised the sculpture's lifelike quality, noting the marvelous suggestion of life bursting out of the stone. Work marked an important step in liberating statuary from niche structures. Showcases Donatello's expertise in portraying emotion and humanizing traditionally idealized subjects. Wow. Okay, let's check out the next one. Donatello Saint Mark. Let's see. So here's Saint Mark. Again, very beautiful. Looks very real. Looking at the same angle. Doing the beard must be so hard. Making a beard from stone, that's hard. Okay. Significant marble sculpture created between 1411 and 13 for the same church in Florence, commissioned by the Linen Weavers Guild, Arte, Arte de Lineal, Line, Lin, Lineoli, Lineoli for the niche at Arsen Michel stands at 7 feet 9. Originally displayed in an exterior niche of the church, now housed in the Museum of Arts and Michel, depicts Mark the Evangelist, revered, revered, revered as the creator of the Church of Alexandria. Considered one of the first Renaissance monuments, revived the use of contrapposto stands in freestanding sculpture, demonstrate detailed realism, including visible veins on Saint Mark's left hand. His left hand. Veins. I believe this is the veins they're talking about. Wow. Wow. Showing veins from stone, including visible veins on St. Mark's left hand. Saint's pose is naturalistic with more weight on his right leg. Yes, makes sense. More weight on his right leg, left knee bent, and torso slightly twisted. Torso is slightly twisted. Yes, that's right. Draper realistically reveals the figure's form underneath, breaking from medieval traditions. It is beautiful. Donatello emphasized the garments due to the commission coming from the Linen Guild. Ooh, okay. Donatello adjusted the proportions for viewing from below, making the head and torso larger. Making the head and torso larger. Adjustment initially caused rejection when viewed at street level, but was accepted when placed in its intended position. Interesting. Reception and legacy. Michelangelo reportedly praised the statue, saying he had never seen anyone who looked more like an honest man. The work signaled a break from the international Gothic style and ushered in a new era of naturalistic sculpture. Hmm. Now let's go to David, the the most popular one. Wait, so this is David? This is crazy. So I believe there is a Donatello David, and then there is a Michelangelo David, and Michelangelo David is the bigger, more popular one. Interesting. Interesting. Bronze David is one of the most famous and influential work created between 1430 and 1440, likely commissioned by Cosimo de Medici, originally placed in the courtyard of the Palazzo Medici in Florence. First freestanding nude male sculpture made since antiquity. First unsupported standing work of bronze cast during the Renaissance, marks a significant break from Gothic traditions towards Renaissance ideals. Stands approximately 158 centimeter, 62-inch tall, depicts David as a nude youth wearing only a hat and boots. Wearing only hat and boots, and there is something in his feet. What is this? He's wearing boots. He has something in his hand. Hair is long. Interesting. Whose head is that? David stands with one foot on Goliath's severed, severed head, holding Goliath's sword. Hmm. Presents David as a young, slender figure rather than a bearded king, combines classical ideals with naturalistic observation, showcases his mastery of human anatomy and balance. Human anatomy and balance. And making this out of bronze is definitely difficult. He's not at all shown as muscular. His quads are muscular though. From this angle, his quads look muscular. Here they look very normal. He does have some abs, okay? David's youth and nudity emphasizes his victory through divine intervention rather than physical strength. Work symbolizes the triumph of intellect and faith over brute force, served as both a religious icon and political symbol for Florence. Influenced later Renaissance artists, including Michelangelo, represents a pivotal moment in the development of Renaissance sculpture, now housed in Bargello Museum in Florence. Okay. All right. So we looked into St. George, we looked into St. Mark, bronze, the bronze David, first freestanding nude male statue, and then he worked on Gata Milata. He inspired subsequent generations of artists, including Michelangelo and Raphael. So Michelangelo and Raphael came after him. Interesting. And what about Da Vinci? I believe Michelangelo and Da Vinci were present at the same time because they kind of had a rivalry. So not sure what happened. Were they together or not? Let's see. So this is Gata Melata, one of the later, one of the statue sculptures that he made later in his life. Interesting. Equestrian equestrian statue of Gautamilata is a significant sculpture created in 1453, cast in bronze, depicting Erasmo da Narni, nicknamed Gautamilata, a Venetian military leader, located in Piazza del Santo in Padua, Italy, where it was originally installed. Measurements: earliest surviving Renaissance equestrian statue and the first full size equestrian statue since antiquity, commissioned by the Republic of Venice to honor Gattamelata after his death in 1443. Controversial at the time, as equestrian statues were typically reserved for rulers and kings. And he was just a military leader. Okay. A lot of stuff is going on over here. He was definitely very, very good. It is all bronze. Wow. Revive the grandeur of classical equestrian portraiture, portrayed both horse and rider in life size, breaking from medieval traditions, used emotion, position, and symbolism to convey power rather than exaggerating size. Horse's front left hoof rests as an orb, symbolizing military advances and Gautamilata's power. Okay, the first left hoof right over here. Gautamilata is depicted in armor with a sword ready for battle. Pedestal features reliefs and fake doors symbolizing the entrance to the underworld. Hmm, interesting. Entrance to the underworld. Created using the lost wax method common for bronze statues at the time, inspired by ancient Roman equestrian statues, particularly that of Marcus Aurelius. Yes. Served as a model for later equestrian monuments throughout Europe, praised by contemporaries and later artists for its naturalism and classical revival, considered a bridge between classical and modern art, influencing future generations of artists. Remains one of Donatello's best known and most admired works. I am curious who made the eques- equestrian equestrian statue of Marcus Aurelius. Let's see. Yes, right here. The philosopher king. Hmm. Wow. The horse is way more muscular. Marcus Aurelius's calves are big. I like it. Look at the muscular horse. They both are pretty much looking in the same direction. There's some gold plating going on, and the colors seems to be changing throughout. Okay, let's see. Oh, made by an unknown sculptor in ancient Rome. Was made around wow 175 to 180 CE. Hmm. So it was made 1500 years before that Kata Milata was made, and still it looks good. It pretty much looks good. There was a lot of value in building something with bronze because if it's really really good, it can stay for 2000 years. Wow. Either during Marcus Aurelius' lifetime or shortly after his death, likely commissioned to commemorate his victory over Germanic tribes or as a memorial after his death, not known or recorded in any surviving ancient sources. Only surviving bronze equestrian statue from ancient Rome, as most others were melted down in later periods, considered a masterpiece of Roman art and sculpture, demonstrating exceptional skill in portraying both the emperor and the horse realistically. Remains a mystery. This is not uncommon for ancient Roman artworks, as individual artists were often not credited in the same way as they are today. Wow. Okay. Now let's look into if you're missing any popular Donatello artwork. What are the most admired Donatello's work? Ooh, yeah, he definitely has a lot. We see a muscular baby over here. That's pretty good. David comes the first, then St. George, then Guatemala. Then we have Magdalene, Feast of Herod, Saint Mark, and Zucon. Okay. One of the Donatello's most famous work, first freestanding made male sculpture since antiquity, innovative for its time and highly influential. St. George, we read about it, praised for its lifelike quality, emotional depth, important step in Renaissance sculptures, equestrian, Gautamilata, earliest surviving Renaissance equestrian statue. Renaissance. So yeah, the Marcus Aurelius was way, way back, like way. It is the earliest kind of the earliest surviving one, but this is from the Renaissance period, highly admired for naturalism and classical revival, influential for later equestrian monuments. Magdalene renowned for its emotional intensity and realism. Considered one of his most moving works, praised by Giorgio Vasari for its anatomical accuracy. Okay, we got Feast of Herod, famous for its innovative use of perspective in British sculpture, showcases Donatello's mastery of the schiacciato, schiacciato technique. Saint Mark, departure from the Gothic styles towards classical aesthetics, praised for its naturalistic portrayal of human personality and expression. Zuccone, reportedly Donatello's favorite of his own work. Okay, admired for its realistic and natural appearance. Let's start with Zuccone. Let's see. Donatello Zucconi, I think. Ooh, ooh. Okay, what are we looking at over here? He made a zombie. Is this a zombie? Let's see. Who do we have here? He does have his biceps. Look at his biceps. Very well formed, very well defined. And the drape has some, not a natural aesthetic, but an interesting aesthetic going on. Beautiful. Okay. Creation location 2325, commissioned for the bell tower campanile of the Cathedral of Florence, now housed in Museo dell'Opera del Duomo in Florence. Zucconi means pumpkin head or bald head in Italian. Zucconi, pumpkin head or bald head in Italian, referring to the figure's baldness, believed to depict the biblical prophet Habakkuk, though some sources suggest it may represent Jeremiah. Considered one of Donatello's masterpieces, known for its striking realism and naturalism, departing from traditional Gothic styles. Okay. Reportedly Donatello's favorite amongst his own works. Really curious. Why? Carved from marble, demonstrates mastery of realistic portrayal, shows a gaunt, bald figure with a highly expressive face, said to have sworn by the sculpture, saying, "By the faith I place in my Zucconi." Legend has it that Donatello shouted at the statue while working, "Speak, damn you, speak." Hmm. So he was known to make. This seems like this is what happened to the marble, and then it was cleaned up to look like this. And maybe this is the current state of the sculpture. Part of a series of prophet statues Donatello created for the Campanile, considered one of the most important marble sculptures of the 15th century, exemplifies the shift towards ideals in sculpture. Why was Zucconi Donatello's favorite work? Ooh, look at that. There's a pocket. It's marble. This looks so good. So good. Look at the back. Oh no, what happened over here? Feels like somebody stabbed him. This is so cool that we are able to preserve the art from 500 years ago and even like 2000 years ago. This is beautiful. Okay. The lack of detailed information about the prophet in biblical texts allowed Donatello more artistic freedom than usual in creating the sculpture, realism, striking realism, naturalism, which was known to be innovative for its time, highly lifelike statue, emotional depth, complex psychological and emotional qualities, with a melancholy and questioning expression that seems to have been particularly proud of. Level of detail and the technique used in creating Zucconi, especially in the drapery and facial features. Strong emotional attachment to this work, widely admired and is considered one of the most important marble sculptures of the 15th century. Depiction of a prophet as a humble, introspective figure rather than an idealized one was groundbreaking for its time. Okay, so Zucconi was good. We saw got Melata. Let's check out. Oh, this one is wood. So we got bronze, marble. Saint George was marble. Saint George, and we saw Saint George, and we saw Saint Mark. This is Saint Mark, and this is Saint George. Okay. Saint George was marble. Yes. Gautamilata was bronze. Magdalene is wood. Feast of Herod is bronze. Saint Mark is marble. I thought even okay, Saint George is marble. Okay. And Zucconi is marble. So this one would be interesting. Magdalene. It's wood. How does wood survive? This is crazy. This is crazy. What is the story over here? How did this wood survive? Wow. Okay, there is a crack on the head. There's this crack on the head. Carved. One of his most famous and emotionally powerful sculptures, carved between 53 to 55 from white poplar wood, painted with realistic flesh tones and golden highlights in the hair, originally painted. Commissioned for the Baptistery of Florence, now housed in Museo dell'Opera del Duomo in Florence, portrays Mary Magdalene as an emaciated, aging penitent, departs from traditional depictions of Mary Magdalene as young and beautiful, shows her clothed in her own hair or hair shirt, clothed in her own hair, young and beautiful, emphasizing a renunciation of her former life, renowned for its striking realism and emotional intensity, demonstrates his mastery of conveying human emotion and suffering. Considered one of his most moving works, use of wood allows for intricate texturing to convey the agonized state of the saint. His skill in working with different materials caused astonishment among contemporaries for its unprecedented realism. Unprecedented realism. Wow. Praised by Giorgio Vasari for its anatomical accuracy and emotional depth, continues to be regarded as one of his masterpieces, emphasizes the humanity of biblical characters, presents her as relatable figure to be pitied and admired, reflects his own reckoning with mortality after a period of illness. Hmm. I'm actually curious. So, what is the story of Mary Magdalene? Seems like she used to be young and beautiful. Wow, look at the body of Jesus. So aesthetic. So aesthetic right over here. Prominent figure in early Christianity as one of Jesus' most devoted followers. From Magdala, a town on the western shore of Sea of Galilee, likely wealthy and of high social status as she helped support Jesus' ministry financially. Hmm. One of several women who traveled with and supported Jesus and his disciples. Jesus had cast seven demons out of her, which likely referred to healing her from a severe physical or mental illness. Witness present at his cruci, crucifixion, when many male disciples had fled. One of the women who went to his tomb to anoint his body, first witness to the resurrected Jesus is in all four Gospels, often called the apostle to the apostles for being the first to announce the resurrection portrayal, long conflated with other biblical figures and portrayed as a repentant sinner, a prostitute, though this view is now rejected by scholars. Early Orthodox tradition, she was always seen as a devoted disciple. Gnostic texts portray her as having a special relationship with Jesus and deeper understanding of his teachings. Various traditions claim she evangelized in southern France or accompanied John the Evangelist to Ephesus. One of the most prominent female figures, role as first witness to the resurrection makes her crucial to early Christianity, evolving interpretations of her career. How did Mary Magdalene die? You can see some reference over here to Donatello's sculpture. Retired to Ephesus, modern day Turkey, with the Virgin Mary, died and buried in Ephesus. Her relics were later transferred to Constantinople in 886 CE, traveled to southern France, then called Gaul and preached there, spent her last 30 years as a hermit in a cave in the region of Provence. She died after receiving Holy Communion from a priest friend who lived nearby, lived in a cave in the Saint Baume Mountains, spent the last 30 years of her life as a hermit, was buried in the town of Saint Maximin la Saint Baume. Tradition suggests she died in Jerusalem or other locations in Holy Land. Hmm. Quick search on Saint Baume Mountains and how they look like today. Let's check this out. Ooh, so this seems like it is kind of holy place today. Southern France sprang between the departments of Bouches du Rhône and Var, Grotto or Cave Saint Baume, Boamo. After fleeing persecution in the Holy Land, she's said to have spent the last 30 years of her life there as a hermit. King Louis IV of France visited the grotto in 1234, managed by Dominicans, until it was pillaged during the French Revolution. A hostel and a school were established there to serve as a refugee for those fleeing Nazi persecution. Remained famous Christian pilgrimage destination with visitors able to reach the cave via Chemin de Roy or King's Footpath. Chemin de Roy. Nearby town of Saint Maximin la Saint Baume, there is a Basilica Marie Madeleine, founded in 1295, which is said to contain her relics. Area includes a sacred forest once revered by Druids, containing rare plant species unique to southern Europe. Very interesting. Okay, so we dived into Magdalena, and now let's check out the Feast of Herod. Feast of Herod. This is it. So this art is similar to the last, but instead it's a sculpture. It's kind of an embossed painting. what is this? Let's see. Let's see. What's the story of the feast? 1427, created for the baptismal font of Siena Cathedral in Italy. Biblical story of the beheading of John the Baptist. This looked like a head, and I think this is the head. This is the hair. I think this is the nose, and there is some beard over here. Very interesting. One of Donatello's earliest relief sculptures and his first in bronze, pioneering use of linear perspective in sculpture. Linear perspective in sculpture employs continuous narrative, combining multiple scenes in one frame, uses Donatello's innovative relievo schiacciato flattened relief. Oh, so maybe this is flattened relief. So it's basically, it's not a 3D sculpture, it's flat and it's embossed. So it's kind of, it's a it's a sculpture that's kind of flattened, and then you have certain embossed as elements to it. Very interesting. Creates an illusion of depth through contrasting high and low relief, gilded bronze, giving it a sparkling appearance. Main figures pushed to the sides, exposing the floor to emphasize perspective. Main figures pushed to the side to expose the floor, emphasizing perspective. Interesting. Architectural elements create depth and frame the scene. Focal point leads to a V of open space, encouraging the eye to move across the panel. Interesting. Figures react with horror and shock to the severed head. Okay, so here's the head presented to this person. This person is presenting it, and everybody over here is shocked. This person is clearly shocked. Contrasts the rational order of the architecture with the disorder of human emotion. Demonstrates the application of Brunelleschi's perspective theories to sculpture, influenced later Renaissance art and sculpture, considered one of the great masterpieces of Renaissance. Hmm. Now that we have looked into some of his art, let's check out some story. So, do we have anything about his childhood? My spelling was definitely wrong, but let's see. So, born in Florence, Italy, 1386 to 1387. Exact date is uncertain. We got some paintings over here. Nice. Full name was Donato di Niccolo di Beto Bardi, but he was known simply as Donatello. Father was Niccolo di Beto Bardi, a member of the Florentine Woolworkers Guild, Arte della Lana. The family had a modest but comfortable place in Florentine's bourgeois society. Donatello received his childhood education in the house of the Martelli family, one of Florence's wealthiest families. Connection likely provided him with opportunities for his artistic development. Interesting. So, father was working at Florentine's woolworkers. They had a modest, they were kind of middle class. He received his childhood education in the house of Martelli family, so where he kind of had opportunities to develop his art. Around 1400, between age 14 and 15, likely began an apprenticeship in stone carving, possibly with sculptures working on Florence Cathedral. He may have also learned goldsmithing as a youth. He worked as an apprenticeship in the workshop of Lorenzo Ghiberti, a renowned sculptor. He worked on the bronze doors for the Florence Baptistry. 1401, at the age of 15, involved in an incident in Pistoia where he was accused of hitting a German with a stick. He may have traveled to Rome with Filippo Brunelleschi to study classical ruins, though details of this trip are uncertain. Hmm. Let's see. So Martelli family, being associated with Martelli family, definitely exposed him to a lot of opportunities. Here are two photos. Let's check this out. Martelli family were described as powerful bankers and art collectors with ties to the Medicis. So these are like one level below Medici's. Martelli likely exposed the young Donatello to fine art and sculpture from an early age, potentially sparking his interest in talent. Being educated in the household of a wealthy and influential family would have provided Donatello with a good education and important social connections in Florence. This may have helped him secure early apprenticeships and commissions. He was apprenticed to a goldsmith. This early training in metalworking likely influenced his later skill with bronze sculpture. The family became patron of Donatello's work later in his career. Their early support may have allowed him more artistic freedom to develop his innovative style. Some sources suggest the claim that Donatello was raised by the Martelli family may be exaggerated. Vasari's claim that Donatello was raised and educated in the house of the prominent Martelli family is probably baseless and given for literary, even political reasons. His innovative Renaissance style seems to have developed more through his later training travels and artistic experiences. Hmm. Interesting stories that Vasari mentioned about Donatello. Let's see. The crucifix competition recounts a famous story about Donatello and his friend Brunelleschi. Donatello proudly showed Brunelleschi a wooden crucifix he had made for Santa Croce. Santa Croce. Brunelleschi criticized it, saying Christ looked like a peasant. Donatello challenged him to do better. Donatello challenged him to do better, resulting in Brunelleschi creating his own crucifix. The story highlights the friendly rivalry and artistic competition between the two Renaissance masters. Levitt, Levitt, bust of Niccolo da Uzzano by Donatello, not the bronze discussed in this article. Interesting. The generous artist tells a story that Donatello kept a bucket of money hanging from the ceiling of his workshop. He allowed those around him to take money from it if they needed it, demonstrating his generosity and lack of concern for material wealth. He mentions that Donatello and Brunelleschi traveled to Rome together to study classical ruins. While there, they supported themselves by working for Roman goldsmiths, which likely provided important training for Donatello's future work in sculpture. Despite his fame, Vasari notes that Donatello seemed to live and die in relatively modest circumstances. He adds that Donatello was very happy in his old age, suggesting that the artist was content with his life and work. While not a specific story, Vasari portrays Donatello as a courteous man, but also hints at his strong artistic temperament. This is evident in the crucifix story and his Donatello's willingness to challenge and be challenged by his peers. Hmm. Lens of Vasari's influential work, Lives of the Artist. Very interesting. How did the friendship with Brunelleschi, 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 let's say Brunelleschi now. Brunelleschi helped in his art. Let's see, what do we have? Why Donatello was a father of the Renaissance. Roman study trip. Donatello and Brunelleschi traveled together to Rome to study classical art and architecture. Trip was crucial for his artistic development as it gave him a deep understanding of ornamentation and classic forms, important knowledge that would eventually change the face of 15th century Italian art. They gained valuable knowledge by excavating the ruins of classical Rome. Experience exposed Donatello to ancient artistic technique and styles. Gothic influence. His association with Brunelleschi likely influenced him in the Gothic style that can be seen in much of his early work. Brunelleschi's work on architectural perspective likely influenced Donatello's sculptural techniques. Donatello incorporates significant 15th century developments in perspective and illusion into his bas relief work. So, Gothic influence, architectural perspective, excavation of classical ruins. The friendship fostered a collaborative environment. For example, they worked together on excavations and measurements of Roman buildings, which was decisive for the entire development of Italian art in the 15th century. The friendship also included elements of artistic rivalry, as evidenced by the famous story about their competing crucifixes. The competition likely pushed both artists to innovate and excel in their work. As Donatello developed his own style, he began to depart from the standards Brunelleschi had established. This created a rift between them, but it also shows how their initial collaboration led to Donatello developing his unique artistic voice. Oh, wow. Did Donatello have rivalry with any other artists? Let's see. Da Vinci was known to have rivalry with Michelangelo, and pretty much everybody, when they are at the peak, they kind of had this rivalry going on with the top the top two always have some sort of rivalry. Ooh, this is really cool. This is really cool. This is like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but with the OG gang. So we have Da Vinci. I don't know which one is Raphael, which one is Michelangelo, which one is uh, Donatello. But this is really cool. This is the David. This is the David. This is the Mike. This is the Donatello David. This is the, I believe, Michelangelo David, which is the most popular one. I think I've seen this one in life. I believe this one is David as well. But who made that? This is so cool. This is so cool. This photo is cool. Okay. So we got some rivalries over here. Did have some notable rivalries with other artists. Filippo Brunelleschi, despite being close friends initially, they developed a rivalry late in their life. The friendship soured as Donatello's artistic style diverged from Brunelleschi's standards, created a rift between them that persisted until their deaths. Brunelleschi even composed critical epigrams against Donatello. There was some rivalry stemming from the 1401 competition for the baptistry doors in Florence, though initially Donatello supported Ghiberti's winning design. Later tensions arose when Ghiberti was paired with Brunelleschi on a project, with Brunelleschi, Donatello's friends at the time, scheming to remove Ghiberti. Okay. General artistic temperament. Donatello was known to be somewhat difficult to work with and had a reputation for being abrasive. He was reported to have a temper and an abrasive sense of humor. Reportedly destroy his own sculptures rather than sell them to people he didn't approve of. Hmm. Michelozzo. While they had successful partnership for many years, it ended in a dispute that was mostly the fault of Donatello, which, while influential, are not always historically accurate. The rivalries, especially Brunelleschi, seem to have been more about artistic differences and personal tensions rather than outright hostility. Let's see. Let's see. Tell me more. Tell me more. Why he would destroy his own sculptures. Ooh, so this is Donatello. Interesting, interesting. I don't have specific information. Okay. We can infer about Donatello's character and work ethic. He was known for his innovative techniques and high standards in sculpture. May have suggests he may have been particular about the quality and reception of his work, temperament, somewhat difficult to work, and had a reputation of being abrasive. Relationship with patron, worked for many prominent patrons, including the Medici family. No specific mention of him refusing to sell works to certain people. Given his reputation as a master sculptor, it's possible he might have been very critical of his own work and unwilling to release pieces he felt were subpar. Hmm. I'm really curious about. I read this one thing. Okay. Donatello was very happy in his old age. So let's see what we have over here. Tell me more. Donatello was very happy in his old age. Here we got Donatello. Nice. So the purple one is Donatello, I believe. Returned to Florence. In 1454, he returned to Florence for the final time, where he would spend his last years. Cosimo de' Medici had given Donatello some land on his deathbed, which technically made him nobility. However, Donatello disliked the responsibilities of managing the land and caring for peasants. He asked Piero de' Medici, Cosimo's son, to take the land back. In exchange, Piero provided Donatello with a small apartment in Piazza del Duomo, Florence, where he lived out his final days. Donatello found working in stone too arduous. He spent his final years working on bronze reliefs, including those for two pulpits in the church of San Lorenzo, the burial place of many Medici family members. Passed away on December 13, 1466, at the age of 79 or 80. He was buried next to his patron and friend. Hmm. So Cosimo gave him a land to manage. He kind of didn't like it. And by the time Cosimo died, so when his son, Piero de' Medici, came about, he took the land back and instead gave an apartment to live in where he could make his stuff, make his art. And then when he died, he was buried next to his patron and friend Cosimo de' Medici in the Basilica of San Lorenzo. He was cared for and able to continue his artistic work until the end of his life. The fact that he was buried next to Cosimo de' Medici also indicates the high esteem in which he was held. Hmm. Wow. Okay. I'm gonna quickly look. What do we have about Cosimo de' Medici? Also, the sunset is looking beautiful right now, but we will keep going. We'll keep going and keep getting deeper and deeper. Let's see. I did go deep into the entire Medici family. So let's see. I think Cosimo Medici was one of the early members of Medici family. Born in Florence, son of Giovanni the Medici, founder of the Medici Bank, inherited his wealth and banking expertise from his father, became de facto ruler of Florence in 1434 after a brief exile. used his wealth and political connections to gain influence. Viewed as first among equals rather than an absolute ruler, expanded the Medici Bank to Europe, made the bank the primary financial institution for the papacy, amassed enormous wealth, allowing him to be a major patron of the arts, spent over 600,000 gold florins, approx 500 million. Oh, Florence. So, Florence, the currency of Florence was Florence. It'd be really cool to understand like what led to the death of Florence. On art and culture, commissioned works like Donatello's David, supported artists, architects, and scholars, established the Medici family as effective rulers of Florence. So Cosimo de' Medici was the guy who, the earliest guy, made Medici. Yeah, this makes sense. So when we talk about Donatello, Donatello was he was kind of the first person who kind of kicked off this entire renaissance, and Cosimo de' Medici is the person who was the first one who made a lot of money, and that's when he was like, where do I put this money on? So let's put this money into art. They started commissioning Donatello and all the other artists, and that's where Medici family started growing, their artwork started growing, and renaissance periods kicked off because of this entire institution of using funneling your money into artwork and then developing the entire art industry for or art industry, atelier, all of that for 200, 300 years. Supported artists, architects, and scholars. Established the Medici family as effective rulers of Florence. Balanced power between different factions in the city. Expanded Florence's influence in Italy. Known as Pater Patriae. Pater Patriae, father of the fatherland, laid the foundation for the Medici family's long rule in Florence. Okay, so similar to how we saw Monaco with Francesco Grimaldi, he was the guy who kicked off the entire Grimaldi dynasty. Cosimo de' Medici kicked off the Medici family's long rule in Florence, contributed significantly to the flourishing of the Italian Renaissance. Married Contessina de' Bardi, died age 74, buried in the Basilica of San Lorenzo. Let's see how San Lorenzo looks like today, but this is also interesting. Cosimo's rule marked a turning point in Florentine history, establishing the city as a major center of Renaissance art and culture while solidifying the Medici family's power. Let's look into Basilica of San Lorenzo. One of the largest churches in Florence, claims to be one of the oldest churches in Florence, consecrated in 393 AD, served as Florence's cathedral for 300 years. Okay. Wow. Wow. Look at the muscles. Look at the definition of muscles over here. We don't have the exact picture of the church, but interesting. Let's see. Served as Florence's cathedral for 300 years. Medici connection. Parish church of the Medici family, burial place for principal members of Medici family. Giovanni de' Medici offered to finance a new church in 1419, designed primarily by Filippo Brunelleschi. Oh, friend of Donatello. He designed the church for the Medici family. Okay, features the old sacristy, Sagrestia Vecchia, designed by Brunelleschi. Oh, so Brunelleschi was big. New sacristy, Sagrestia Nuovo, Nuova, designed by Michelangelo. Old sacristy, sacristy, designed by Brunelleschi between 1421 and 1426. Square dome space of the south transept contains tombs of several Medici family members. Medici chapels located in the apse includes the chapel of princes and the new sacristy. Houses monuments to Medici family members. Hidden corridor, discovered in 1976 under the new sacristy, contains drawings by Michelangelo on its walls, believed to be where Michelangelo hid during the political turmoil in 1527. Wow. Continued patronage. The Medici family continued to fund and develop the church over centuries. The last Medici commissioned work in the church in 1742 stands as a testament to the Medici family's power, wealth, and artistic patronage in Renaissance Florence. Wow. And when did Florence stopped being used as a currency? That would be interesting. Let's see. Florin, a coin with roots in Florence, global legacy, demise of Florin, the Royal Mint Museum, death of reserve currency in United Kingdom. Let's see. We got some photos. Gratia Regina Elizabeth, 1 florin, tenth of a pound, 1/10 of a pound. What does this say? What does this say? Cannot read it. Frank Los Astrial Impe, Imperator. Huh. Very interesting. The florin 2 shilling piece remained in circulation until 1993. It was the last pre decimal coin to be withdrawn from circulation. The old size 10p pieces, which was equivalent to florin, ceased to be a legal tender at the end of June 1993. Decimalization in the UK. The UK introduced decimal currency in 1971. After decimalization, the florin was redenominated as a 10p piece and continued to circulate alongside the new decimal 10p coins until 1993. Florin was adopted in Australia, Canada, and New Zealand and was retained by Ireland post independence until their respective decimalization. The Dutch florin, also called gulden, lasted until 2002. It disappeared with the introduction of the euro in Netherlands. This marked the end of a last working florin as a currency. The original Florentine florin ceased to exist in 1531. Hmm. However, the term florin continued to be used in many countries for various coins over the century. While the original Florentine ended in 16th century, various forms of florins continued to be used in different countries until the late 20th or early 21st century, with the British florin lasting until 93 and the Dutch florin until 2002. Wow, very interesting. What led to why or what led to the original Florentine? Let's see. The grammar doesn't make sense, but I hope Perplexity understands me. Let's see. Several factors led to the original Florentine florin ceasing to exist. Political changes, obviously. Let's go. Wow. This looks very golden. Floor. Wow. This looks like it's made with gold. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. Republic of Florence was being transformed into a hereditary duchy ruled by the Medici dynasty in 1531. This marked the end of the Republican era during which Florence had flourished. Venetian ducat had increasingly dominated Mediterranean trade since around 1400, largely usurping the role of the florin. The ducat maintained its standard and became more trusted in international trade. Limitations affecting trust. Poor reproductions of the florin began to shake confidence in the original coin. This led to a preference for alternatives like the Venetian ducat. Shift to silver coinage. Silver became increasingly dominant in European coinage due to the revival of old mines and discovery of new ones. This broader trend affected the gold florins prominence. The late medieval age of gold was fading before a new age of silver. The shift in precious metal availability and preference continued to the florins decline. Hmm. Silver became increasingly dominant in European coinage due to the revival of old mines and discovery of new ones. Imitations affecting trust. Poor reproductions of the florin began to shake confidence. Interesting. Economic changes. So, from age of gold to age of silver, linguistic shift. Even in Florence itself, the word ducat became commonly used instead of florin, indicating a cultural shift away from the florin. And let's do a quick search on Piero de' Medici, who's the son of Cosimo. Interesting. Born 1472, son of Lorenzo, son of Lorenzo the Magnificent, member of the powerful Medici family, became ruler of Florence in 1492 at the age of 21 upon his father's death. Rule lasted only 2 years from 1492 to 1494. Described as having beautiful features and being a good soldier. Beautiful features and good soldiers. Good soldier. Lacked political sense, which led to his downfall, known as the unfortunate or the fatuous, due to his poor judgment. Key events: faced domestic threats from reformer Girolamo Savonarola, dealt with intrigues from the younger branch of the Medici family, abandoned the traditional French alliance in favor of Naples, made a disastrous agreement with King Charles VIII of France during the French invasion of Italy. This agreement aroused indignation in Florence, leading to a revolt, forced to flee Florence in 1494, ending the first period of Medici rule. Attempted unsuccessfully to reinstate himself in Florence multiple times. 96, 97, 98. Joined French forces of Louis XII in southern Italy. Drowned in Garigliano River on December 28, 1503 at age 31. Buried in the cloister of Monte Cassino. His poor leadership led to the temporary end of Medici rule in Florence. The Medici family would not rule Florence until 1512. Oh no. Oh no. So for like around 20 years, Medici family wasn't there. Brief and unsuccessful rule marked a significant turning point in Florentine history, leading to a period of Republican government and the rise of influential figures like Savonarola. Back to Donatello. Was Donatello the first Renaissance artist? The first Renaissance sculpture, lifestyle, major works, biography, sculptures, David, facts. Why was he the father of Renaissance? David, paintings and facts. Okay, interesting. Considered as one of the greatest of all Italian Renaissance artists and one of the greatest Italian Renaissance artists, described as the artist who initiated the Renaissance in sculpture. Along with Brunelleschi and Masaccio, Donatello is credited with setting in motion the Renaissance in Florence. He's called the father of Renaissance and the epicenter of Renaissance art by some scholars. His work marked a departure from the medieval Gothic styles towards classical revival and new Renaissance aesthetics. Innovations in sculpture, like the first freestanding nude male figure since antiquity, his Bronze David, was groundbreaking for the Renaissance period. Donatello was born around 1386 and began his career in the early 1400s, which placed him at the very beginning of the early Renaissance period. While he was tremendously influential in initiating Renaissance culture, it's important to note that other artists like Brunelleschi in architecture and Masaccio in painting were also pioneering Renaissance styles around the same time. The Renaissance emerged gradually with multiple artists contributing to its development. Donatello was certainly among the earliest and most important, especially in sculpture, but it would be an oversimplification to call him definitely the first Renaissance artist. Okay, cool. So for every specific segment, there he was kind of like the right when the Renaissance period kicks off, and he was specifically doing groundbreaking work in the sculpture area. Interesting. This is a good question. Who were his contemporaries in the Renaissance? Not many. Okay. So we got Brunelleschi, architect, close friend, and collaborator in the early years. They traveled to Rome together to study classical ruins. Friendship later became strained as Donatello's style diverged from Brunelleschi's standards. Sculptor and metal worker Lorenzo Ghiberti. Donatello initially supported Ghiberti's winning design for the Florence Baptistery doors in 1401. Some rivalry developed between them later. Painter, along with Donatello and Brunelleschi, credited with setting in motion the Renaissance in Florence. Hmm. Setting in motion the Renaissance in Florence. Michelozzo, sculptor and architect, formed a successful partnership with Donatello for about 9 years. Okay. Whoa. Masaccio lived. Whoa. Masaccio didn't live much, just 27 years. And still, he was one of the big Renaissance artists. Formed a successful partnership with Donatello for about 9 years. So Donatello, Ghiberti, and Brunelleschi, they were the big ones who kickstarted the Renaissance period in Florence. And then we have Luca della Robbia from 1399, 1400 to 1482. Sculpture shared some stylistic elements with Donatello, particularly in reviving classical forms. It's worth noting Donatello preceded and influenced later Renaissance masters, such as Da Vinci, 1452. So there was some overlap over there between Donatello and Da Vinci. 1519, Michelangelo and Raphael, considered one of the earliest and most influential pioneers of Renaissance sculpture, helping to set the stage for these later artists. Hmm. And Da Vinci was from Italy, but he also kind of spent a lot of time in France because that's where they kind of appreciated his work more. I believe so. Did Donatello and Da Vinci ever interacted in person? The answer is no, no, no. They just had a quick Zoom call. Let's see. There's no clear evidence that they ever interacted in person. Donatello lived approximately from 86 to 66, while Da Vinci lived from 1452. Oh no, 66, 52. So when Donatello died, Da Vinci was just 14 years old. So yeah, he wouldn't be the Da Vinci. This is a beautiful image. This means there was only a brief overlap in their lifetimes, Leonardo being about 14 years old when Donatello died. No documented evidence of direct interaction between the two. They were part of the same cultural and artistic milieu, both being influential figures in the Italian Renaissance. Donatello's work, particularly his innovations in sculpture, had a significant impact on later Renaissance artists, including Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo would have been aware of Donatello's work and likely studied them, as Donatello was already considered a master by the time Leonardo began his artistic career. Hmm, very interesting. Okay, now let's see between Masaccio, Michelozzo, Michelozzo. So tell me more. Michelozzo formed a successful partnership with Donatello for about 9 years. Let's see what do we have over here. Introduction to Michelozzo. Collaborated with Ghiberti on a commission from the Money Changers Guild for casting a statue of Saint Matthew for one of the tabernacles. Interesting. Around 1425, Donatello entered into a formal partnership with Michelozzo, who is mainly remembered as an architect but also a sculptor, especially of smaller scale works in metal. He had trained with the mint making dies for coins, where he still had a salaried position. Michelozzo, Italian architect and sculptor, considered one of the great pioneers of architecture during the Renaissance. He was a favored Medici architect who was extensively employed by Cosimo de' Medici. Donatello probably first received artistic training from a local goldsmith. He learned metallurgy and the fabrication of metals and other substances. Interesting. Let's see what we have. Formation and duration. Partnership began around 1425, lasted for 9 years, approximately 1434. Collaboration was very successful and was renewed multiple times. Michael also wanted to extract himself from an arrangement with Ghiberti. Donatello had too much work and was poor at organizing a workshop. Michelozzo excelled at workshop organization. Donatello was primarily a sculptor. Michelozzo was skilled in both sculpture and architecture. Their combined skills made them well qualified for elaborate projects. Tomb of Antipope John 23 in the Florence Baptistry. Exterior pulpit for Prato Cathedral. Okay. Brancacci Dome in St. Angelo a Nilo, Naples. Balustrade reliefs of dancing angels on the Prato Cathedral pulpit. Donatello typically focused on the male sculptural elements. Michelozzo was responsible for architectural frameworks and decorative sculpture. Influence. Their collaboration works, especially tombs, became models for later Renaissance artists. The collaboration ended in 1434 due to a dispute, mostly attributed to Donatello. Issues arose from Donatello's delays in completing his part of the Prato Cathedral pulpit. Despite the end of the formal partnership, they remained on amicable terms. They collaborated again on later projects. Hmm. Delays in completing his part of the Prato Cathedral. An artistic partnership and its patrons in the early Renaissance. Oh, wow. There's a book just on their partnership for 9 years. This is crazy. Donatello and Michelozzo. Let's see if we can find. Whoa. So the exterior pulpit of Prato Cathedral lasted for 10 years. They didn't finish it for 10 years. That is crazy. Whoa. Hmm. So, what was the division of labor? Donatello focused on the main sculptural elements. Michelozzo was responsible for architectural frameworks and decorative sculpture. Commission and timeline. Commission began 1428. Collaboration between Donatello and Michelozzo. Project faced significant delays. Significant delays. 10 years. Donatello's reliefs not delivered until 1438. Pulpit was used for the display of the Sacra Cintola, sacred belt, girdle of Thomas, a famous relic. This display occurred 5 times a year, coinciding with important events, including a trade fair. Okay. Donatello was responsible for creating reliefs of dancing children for the pulpit. So he made this, the dancing angels, dancing children for the pulpit. These reliefs are described as a veritable bacchanalian dance of half nude putti pagan in spirit, passionate in its wonderful rhythmic movement. While designed by Donatello, it's believed they were not actually carved by him. The pulpit is located on an exterior corner of the cathedral's facade. It was designed to allow access from a corridor between the old and new facades. The original reliefs have been replaced with replicas on the exterior pulpit. The weathered originals are now displayed inside the cathedral. Hmm. Okay. The delays and issues with this project strained their partnership. Collaboration was not renewed in 1434, though they remained on amicable terms. Pulpit is considered one of the important works of early Renaissance sculpture, showcases Donatello's innovative style and his ability to create dynamic, expressive figures. But some people believe he didn't do it. So, very interesting. Let's see. Ghiberti, Masaccio. We don't have much of it. Okay. What was the relationship between Donatello and the Medici family? Donatello and Medici family. Let's check it out. House of Medici. Giovanni di Medici, Lorenzo, Pier Francesco. So Giovanni di Bici. Giovanni di Bici. Giovanni di Bici. His two sons, Lorenzo and Cosimo il Vecchio. And Cosimo had Giovanni and Carlo, Cafaggiolo dynasty, and Trebio dynasty. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Too many Cosimos. So this Lorenzo went for Pier Francesco, then Lorenzo again, then Pier Francesco again, and this went to Giovanni, Cosimo 1, Francesco. Then we have another Cosimo 2, Cosimo 3. Over here we got Giovanni, we got Carlo, we got Piero il Gottoso, we got Giuliano, we got Lorenzo il Magnifico, Giovanni, Giuliano, Piero, Lorenzo, Catherine, Ippolito, Giuliano. Wow, what is happening? What is happening? They they had to have one, two, three, four. This is so crazy. And again, when you have the split, the one, two, three over here doesn't match with the one, two, three over there. This is crazy. Crazy. Donatello had a close and significant relationship with the Medici family, particularly with Cosimo de' Medici. Medici family, especially Cosimo, were major patrons of Donatello's art. Cosimo spent over 600,000 gold florins on art and culture, including Donatello's David. The relationship, the relationship between Donatello and Cosimo was described as one of the most important in both their lives. Cosimo took the artist in and provided him with support. Donatello enjoyed steady support and patronage from the Medici family throughout his career. Medici family's patronage allowed Donatello to experiment, evolve, and innovate his artistic work. Through his connection, Donatello had access to a broader intellectual and creative landscape, which shaped his artistic identity. But particularly, Cosimo tolerated and protected Donatello's homosexuality, which was likely well known. Donatello was buried in Basilica of San Lorenzo, the Medici family church, indicating the closeness of the relationship. The Medici family, especially Lorenzo de' Medici, Lorenzo the Magnificent, provided mentorship to Donatello, inviting him to the Medici palace and fostering an environment of artistic exploration. Very interesting. he was getting protection. Let's see, what do we have stories about Donatello's homosexuality? Donatello was likely homosexual or had same-sex attractions. Art historian first posited in 1597 that he was gay or rumored to be gay. It suggested that his homosexuality was well known and tolerated, protected by Medici family, described as one of the first modern artists. Okay. Anecdotes from 1548 book described Donatello falling for male models and apprentices. 1548 book. His studio was described as a homo-social environment where he chose apprentices based on beauty rather than skill. No records of marriage or children. 15th century Florence had a reputation for being accepting of homosexuality. Same sex relations were common among artists and patrons, though still technically illegal. Hmm. Some scholars interpret works like the Bronze David as expression of his sexuality, noting its sensuous and homoerotic qualities. Debate. There's debate about using terms. Some argue his works should be interpreted through the lens of pederasty rather than the modern concepts of homosexuality. Definitive proof is limited. Interesting. Let's. When did Donatello first received patronage from Medici family? First patron of the arts were Giovanni de' Bicci de' Medici. He read and commissioned work from artists like Masaccio and Brunelleschi. Cosimo de' Medici, son of Giovanni, was the first to significantly patronize Donatello. Cosimo took over the Medici Bank in 1434 and used his wealth to promote the arts. Under Cosimo's patronage, Donatello produced sculptures such as Judith and Holofernes. Relationship became very close. Cosimo took the artist in to live as part of his family and often bought him clothes, including an elaborate scarlet cloak. Donatello enjoyed steady support and patronage from the Medici family throughout his career. Ernest under Cosimo, likely after Cosimo took control in 1434. So 1434 he took over, in 1466 Donatello died. So almost 30 years. Even ensuring Donatello would be cared for after Cosimo's death. So interesting. Is this Judith statue? Let's see. Donatello, Judith, and Holofernes. Holofernes. Okay, that was it. Very interesting. Creation timeline. Created between 1457 and 64 towards the end of Donatello's life and career, one of his last major works after returning to Florence from Padua. Padua, bronze sculpture, originally gilded, depicts Judith standing with a raised sword holding Holofernes' head by the hair, cast in 11 parts to facilitate gilding, designed to function as a fountain with water outlets in the base. Hmm. One of the first Renaissance sculptures conceived in the round as a freestanding statue, innovative for its complex three-dimensional composition, viewable from all angles, shows Donatello's undiminished creative power in his later years, represents the triumph of virtue over vice, particularly chastity over lust. Judith symbolizes liberty, virtue, and victory of the weak over the strong. Holofernes represent lust and pride, indicated by his near nudity and medallion on his back. What's a medallion? Commissioned by the Medici family as a companion piece to Donatello's bronze David, meant to symbolize the Medici's role as defenders of Florentine liberty, later became controversial when the Medici were expelled from Florence. Hmm. Originally placed in the Palazzo Medici Riccardi garden, now housed in the Palazzo Vecchio, Florence, a copy stands in the Piazza della Signoria. Judith is fully dressed while Holofernes is nearly naked. Sculpture shows remarkable attention to detail and realism. Donatello used real cloth in some of the modeling for texture. I am curious, when were the Medici expelled from Florence? Three times during the Renaissance period. 1433 to 34, Cosimo de' Medici was exiled when the opposition party led by the Albizzi family gained control of the Signoria. He spent about a year in exile in Padua and Venice before returning to Florence after his supporters regained political power. 1494 to 1512, Medici were expelled in 1494, likely due to likely due in part to anti-Medici sentiments stirred up by Savonarola. They returned to power in 1512, engineered by Giovanni de' Medici, later Pope Leo X, influencing Pope Julius II. And then 1527 to 1530, Florence repudiated Medici authority again in 1527 during the War of the League of Cognac. The Medici reassumed their rule in 1531 after an 11th month siege of the city, headed by Emperor Charles V. Medici rule became more firmly established with Alessandro de' Medici becoming the first Duke of Florence in 1531, effectively transforming. When did the Medici rule end in Florence? First period ended in 1494. Medici returned to power in 1512 but were expelled again in 1527. They were ousted once more in 1527 during the War of the League of Cognac, final end of Medici rule in 1737, after 200 years. The Medici family regained power in Florence in 1530 and ruled as hereditary dukes, later Grand Dukes of Tuscany. The last Medici ruler, Gian Gastone, died without a male heir in 1737. This marked the definitive end of Medici rule in Florence after almost 3 centuries. Lorenzo the Magnificent, Cosimo the Elder, okay. Giovanni, a son of Cosimo the Elder. Piero, a son of Cosimo the Elder. Giuliano, brother of Lorenzo the Magnificent. Botticelli, the painter of this work. Ooh, nice. Botticelli. Interesting facts about Donatello. Let's see. Innovative techniques. Pioneered several sculpting techniques, including schiacciato, or stiacciato, a very shallow relief carving technique that created the illusion of depth. Rilevio schiacciato, schiacciato, shallow relief technique, giving the illusion of depth on very shallow surfaces. Okay. For first freestanding nude, his bronze David, versatility in materials, worked with various materials including marble, bronze, wood, clay, stucco, and stone. He was one of the first to cast bronze sculptural pieces during the Renaissance, realism and emotion. He was known for creating highly realistic and emotionally expressive sculptures, departing from medieval traditions, perspective, applied mathematical perspective to give depth and dimension to his sculptures, a technique more commonly used in painting. Classical revival. He was instrumental in reviving classical sculpture techniques and aesthetics, blending them with new Renaissance ideals. His work significantly includes later Renaissance artists, including Michelangelo. He had close friendship and collaboration with architect Filippo Brunelleschi, with whom he traveled to Rome to study classical ruins. Patronage enjoyed steady support from the Medici family throughout his career, particularly from Cosimo. Continued to innovate as seen in his work like Judith and Holofernes. Who were Donatello's teachers and mentors? Let's see. Oh, Lorenzo Ghiberti worked as an apprentice in Ghiberti's studio from 1404 to 1407. He was renowned for his work on the doors of Florence Baptistery. Under his guidance, honed his skills as a goldsmith and sculptor. Giovanni D'Ambrosio described as a true mentor of Donatello by some scholars. His work provided decisive impetus for the emergence of Renaissance sculpture. Giovanni D'Ambrosio. While not a formal teacher, Brunelleschi was a close friend and collaborator of Donatello. They traveled to Rome together, which greatly influenced Donatello's artistic development. Medici family, important patrons and mentors, they provided opportunities, resources, and an intellectually stimulating environment that shaped his artistic growth. Lorenzo the Magnificent invited Donatello to Medici Palace, fostering an environment of artistic exploration and intellectual exchange. I am curious about this. Tell me more. Lorenzo invited Donatello to the palace. Is this the palace? Beautiful. Beautiful. This is so cool. Lorenzo, known as the Magnificent, played a significant role in mentoring and supporting Donatello. He recognized potential and invited him to Medici Palace, became a hub of artistic exploration and intellectual exchange. Donatello had the opportunity to interact with some of the brightest minds of Renaissance, including philosophers, poets, and fellow artists. Environment provided a confluence of ideas and perspectives, which enriched Donatello's work with depth and complexity. It was described as a crucible that forged his artistic sensibilities. Medici family support led to collaborative endeavors, such as the commission of the Four Saints for the San Lorenzo Basilica in Florence, which Donatello executed with Michelozzo. Medici family's patronage provided Donatello with the freedom to experiment, evolve, and innovate in his artistic practice. Medici family's interest, particularly in humanism and the revival of classical antiquity, aligned with and influenced Donatello's work. Relationship between Donatello and Medici family, especially Lorenzo, is a testament of the transformative power of patronage and mentorship in art history. Hmm. Let's quickly Look at the Four Saints painting. Whoa, what happened to this basilica? Let's see. Oh, I don't have specific information about a work called Four Saints. Basilica contains numerous artworks from various periods. This photo is beautiful, including sculptures and paintings by Renaissance masters. Donatello, contemporary and collaborator of Brunelleschi, created decorative details for the old sacristy, including reliefs and bronze doors. Church features several chapels, and altars, with various religious artworks through specific mentions of a four saint, though specific mention of four saint peace are not present. Works of art such as Filippo Lippi, Rosso Fiorentino, Pontormo, and Bronzino, among others. The Medici chapels, part of the San Lorenzo complex, contain specific sculptural works. Okay, yeah, who are we talking about over here? Who were the brightest minds of Renaissance that he had the opportunity to interact with at Medici Palace? Let's see. No specific names were mentioned. Lorenzo invited Donatello to the Medici Palace, creating an environment for artistic exploration and intellectual exchange. Donatello had the privilege of interacting with, okay, philosophers, poets, fellow artists, described as a hub where there was a confluence of ideas and perspectives, crucible that forged, particularly in humanism. Okay, we don't have specific names. Interesting. Interesting. Let's see. How did Donatello spend his days throughout different periods of his life? Do we have any specific interesting things over here? Let's see. Early years. Let's look into some images. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The art of sculpting, carving, modeling, casting, assembling. Okay. Born in Florence around 1386. Learned stone carving, likely from Florence Cathedral. Briefly studied with stonemason and goldsmith. Learned with Ghiberti, working on bronze doors of Florence Baptistery. 817, he was working independently, produced early works like the Marble David, created sculptures for guilds and the Florence Cathedral, traveled to Rome with Brunelleschi. Middle career, worked on various commissions in Florence, collaborated with Michelozzo on several projects, spent time in Rome studying ancient art, worked for the Medici family, producing decorations for San Lorenzo, moved to Padua in 1443, created the equestrian statue of Gattamelata, worked on commissions for the Church of San Antonio in Padua, experienced some personal crisis or illness during this time, returned to France or Florence, continued working on various commissions, though at a slower pace, died in Florence, spent his days sculpting in various materials, marble, bronze, wood, terracotta, studying and drawing inspiration from classical art, collaborating with other artists and architects, innovating new techniques and sculptures, managing a workshop with assistants, interacting with patrons, including the Medici family. Hmm. Why did Donatello move to Padua? Commissions. He was invited to Padua to work on a series of bronze works, a great crucifix of Padua Cento, Gata Melata, Erasmo da Narni, decorations for the high high altar of the Church of San Antonio. Interesting, interesting. Padua offered Donatello the chance to work on large scale bronze projects, which were not as common in Florence at the time. Described as prosperous city with a university generally friendly to the Medici and their artists, this likely made it an attractive location for Donatello to work. Cosimo had almost certainly given his blessing to Donatello's stay, suggesting the move was supported by his patrons. Had been traveling more frequently since about 1430, and the move to Padua may have been part of this broader pattern of seeking new experiences and artistic challenges. By moving between cities like Rome, Florence, and Padua, Donatello helped spread new ideas on perspective construction to fellow artists. Ended up staying at Padua for about a decade, though he did not remain there continuously and made trips back to Florence. This time was highly productive and influential for both Donatello and the artistic community. Interesting. Tell me more. In Padua, Donatello experienced some personal crisis or illness during this time. So, pretty much, we don't know what exactly happened. Experienced some form of personal crisis or illness. Reportedly inactive for the last 3 years of his stay. Work was stalled on various projects during this period. He was later quoted as saying that he almost died among those frogs in Padua. This suggests a significant struggle during his time there. Hmm. Medical treatment, 1456. A Florentine physician named Giovanni Cellini noted in his account book that he had successfully treated the master for a protracted illness. The work for the San Antonio altar remained unpaid for during this time. The Gata Melata monument was not placed until 1453, despite being mostly completed between 1447 and 1450. He dismissed the large force of sculptors and stonemasons he had been using for these projects. Works completed after this period show a change in style, with figures becoming more withered and spidery, suggesting a possible influence of his personal struggle on his art. He received offers for commissions from Mantua, Modena, Ferrara, and possibly Naples, but nothing came of them, likely due to his condition. Significant turning point in Donatello's life and career, affecting both his productivity and artistic style in the years that followed. Hmm, interesting. Tell me more about the relationship of Donatello and his teacher. I believe it's Giovanni D'Ambrigio. Let's see. Let's see what we have. Described as a true mentor of Donatello, D'Ambrigio's work is said to have provided decisive impetus for the emergence of Renaissance sculpture. D'Ambrigio likely played a crucial role in shaping his early artistic developments and techniques. The mentorship would have occurred during Donatello's formative years, probably in his teens, as was common for apprenticeships at the time. D'Ambrigio was likely associated with the Florence Cathedral workshop, where Donatello worked early in his career. Available documents are completely silent on that matter regarding Donatello's early training, which includes his time with Umbridge, would have been part of the transition from late medieval to early Renaissance sculptural styles. Specific details of the relationship interactions are not well documented in the provided search results. More scholarly inference based on the artistic developments. Hmm. What are some popular controversies about Donatello? Let's get into the drama. Let's get into the drama. Oh, this seems like the. Mm, 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 mm. I forgot what was the name, but the partnership with Michael Lutzer. Let's see. Sexuality in personal life. He was homosexual or had same sex interactions. Very little is known about his personal life, leading to ongoing debate. Religious views. Anecdotes from his friend Vasari suggest Donatello may have been agnostic, potentially influenced his unique approach to religious iconography in his work. Donatello was reported to have volatile temperament and abrasive sense of humor. He was known to destroy sculptures rather than sell them to people he didn't approve of. His antisocial behavior was tolerated due to the protection of the Medici family. His departure from traditional Gothic styles towards more realistic and emotionally expressive sculptures was controversial in his time. The use of nudity in his works challenged conventional norms. Relationship with other artists. Donatello's evolving style created a rift with Brunelleschi that persisted until their deaths. His fierce individuality and departure from established norms sometimes put him at odds with contemporaries. Fierce individuality. Interpretation of religious figures. His realistic and sometimes unflattering portrayals of religious figures like the gaunt Magdalene were groundbreaking and potentially controversial. Democratization of art forms. Equestrian statue was controversial for bringing a form previously reserved for royalty into the mainstream. As an innovator who challenged artistic and social norms of his time, as well as ongoing scholarly debate about his work and life. How did his peers react to his innovative techniques? Rivalry and competition, which drove innovation, yes, pushed him to continually evolve his artistic style. Recognition of innovation. Whoa, this is cool. Where were we at? Donatello's work was particularly admired in his own lifetime for its technical accomplishment and innovation. His relief panels were praised for their use of perspective even when carved with shallow depth. By moving between Rome, Florence, and Padua, Donatello spread new ideas on perspective construction to fellow artists like Andrea Mantegna. Mantegna. His innovative approach challenged other artists to rethink their approach to spatial representation in art. His style stood out as unique and revolutionary compared to his contemporaries. While peers made strides in architecture and relief sculpture, he pioneered a three-dimensional sculptural approach that challenged convention. Innovation, realism, emotional depth, and anatomical precision inspired other artists. Quick check on the stream. We are 2 hours in. Donatello's innovations in realism, emotional depth, we read that. Work influenced later Renaissance artists such as Michelangelo and Raphael. There was also collaboration, for example, his partnership with Brunelleschi. Okay. Let's specifically look into his rivalry with Brunelleschi. Tell me more. I think we already looked into this, but And they said that it wasn't like rivalry. They were likely traveled to Rome together. As Donatello's solo career progressed, he developed a unique style that blended classical and medieval sources. This style departed from the standards Brunelleschi had established. Solo works showed an unorthodox ornamental vocabulary and a tendency to blur the distinction between architectural and sculptural elements. This approach differed sharply from Brunelleschi's architectural style. Departure from Brunelleschi's standards led to an estrangement between the two old friends. Rift persisted until their deaths. Reportedly composed epigrams, short satirical verses against Donatello. Rivalry was part of a broader competitive artistic environment in Florence. Competition often drove innovation and pushed artists to distinguish themselves. Disagreement over Donatello's painted wooden crucifix, Brunelleschi criticized it, leading to a challenge between the two artists to create better works. I'm guessing this is it. Mm. Continue to be highly influential figures. Collaborative beginnings. We read that already. Laid groundwork for the later innovations. Innovate and excel in respective fields. Perspective and proportion challenged Donatello to rethink his approach to spatial representation in art. Developed his unique style blending. Da, 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 da. Okay. Famous anecdote about Donatello's wooden crucifixo and Brunelleschi's response illustrates how their rivalry led to the creation of masterpieces. Brunelleschi used perspective as a means of fixing spatiality a posteriori, while Donatello placed the vanishing point behind figures to highlight the center of action. While Donatello Brunelleschi used perspective as a means of fixing spatiality a posteriori, while Donatello placed the vanishing point behind figures to highlight the center of action. Rivalry, along with competition involving other artists like Ghiberti, helped shape the artistic landscape. Tell me 10 interesting stories about life and career. Teenage troublemaker. Donatello was accused of hitting a German with a stick in Pistua, drawing blood. This is his first appearance in documentary records. As a young man, Donatello and Brunelleschi traveled to Rome. They hired laborers to excavate sites, effectively becoming early archaeologists. Okay, interesting. And this is Donatello's image. Nickname was a childhood nickname meaning Little Donato that stuck with him throughout his life. He even lived as part of Cosima's household for a time. Workaholic, known for never turning down a commission and working tirelessly on his art. When an abbey changed the planned location of a commissioned statue, insisted on adjusting the sculpture to account for the new perspective, showing his innovative approach to art placement. Rivalry, crucifix competition, engage in friendly competition to create better works, pushing each other to create to greater artistic heights. Crisis in Padua. He later said he almost died among those frogs in Padua. Despite his fame and connections to wealthy patrons, was known for his simple lifestyle and dedication to his craft, often prioritizing artistic freedom over strict adherence to guild rules or patron demands. Let's see, if we try to dig deeper, will we get more? Let's see. Let's see. No. No. Popularized unique technique called figura serpentinata to communicate motion sculptures, showing figures in energetic spiraling poses. Revolutionary for its realistic depiction of Mary Magdalene as emaciated from fasting, contrasting with earlier, more idealized portrayals. Okay, let's see if we find more about this specific technique. Figura serpentinata. So this basically means in motion. Wow. Okay. Definition: serpentine figure is a style in sculpture and painting intended to make figures appear more dynamic. Features figures often in a spiral pose, creating a sense of movement and energy. Known for popularizing the technique, create lively and twisting bodies that invite viewers to explore different views of the work by walking around it. Okay, okay, interesting. Technique became a hallmark of Donatello's style, influenced later Renaissance and Mannerist artists. Spiraling poses encouraged viewers to move around the sculpture, experiencing it from multiple angles. Technique allowed him to communicate a sense of motion and emotion in his figures. Popularized his technique, it became more fully developed and systematized during the later Mannerist period. Continued to influence sculptors well into the Baroque period, with example scenes in the work like Bernini's The Rape of Proserpina. Proserpina. Okay. Along with Donatello's other innovations in perspective and expressiveness, contributed to his reputation as one of the most influential sculptors of the early Renaissance. Interesting. Who were which artists which popular artists are known to draw inspiration from Donatello? Let's see. Several prominent. Michelangelo. Donatello's influence can be seen in Michelangelo's David, which followed a similar great graceful classical style. Only two images. Okay. Michelangelo's Bacchus, the Pieta in St. Peter's Basilica, and Madonna del Treppe also show Donatello's influence. Renaissance sculptors. Many Renaissance sculptors closely studied his methods. Florentine artists. Innovative use of perspective and wall tomb designs served as inspiration for later generations of Florentine artists. High Renaissance artists. His students and followers went on to build on his style and lead the art world into the High Renaissance era. Mannerist. The figura serpentinata technique popularized by Donatello influenced Mannerist artists, Baroque sculptors. Continued to influence sculptors well into the Baroque period. Okay. Andrea Mantegna. Perspective construction influenced painters like Andrea Mantegna. Leonardo da Vinci and Raphael were also influenced by Donatello's innovative approach to sculpture and perspective. Hmm, this is good. Which modern artists have been inspired by Donatello's techniques? This is cool. Oh, we have the same answer. Yeah, Fauvists, particularly in the shared emphasis on emotional resonance and freedom of expression. I'm curious, we know about Renaissance era. What is High Renaissance era? Never heard of that. This is our favorite image. Supper. Early Renaissance versus High Renaissance. Okay. Time frame generally considered to have started between 1490 and 1500, ended around 1520 and 1530, with most sources citing 1520, death of Raphael as the end. Lasted approximately 30 to 35 years, centered primarily in Rome, Florence, and Venice. Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, Donato, Bramante, extreme realism and naturalism in depicting human figures and anatomy, use of perspective and proportion to create depth and space, harmonious and balanced compositions, integration of classical, Greek, and Roman influences, innovation in artistic techniques, Leonardo's sfumato, patronage, supported by wealthy individuals, cardinals, rulers, and the papacy, especially Pope Julius II, mediums, painting, sculpture, architecture, notable works, Leonardo's Last Supper and Mona Lisa, Michelangelo's David and Sistine Chapel ceiling, Raphael's School of Athens impact, considered the pinnacle of Renaissance art, influenced subsequent artistic movements, elevated the status of artists as intellectuals and geniuses, often associated with the sack of Rome in 1527, transition into the Mannerist period. Some art historians critique the term High Renaissance as oversimplifying artistic developments and focusing too narrowly on few iconic works. When did the Renaissance era end? So it's believed to have started in 1400s and ended in 1530. Is that right? Let's see. This is so beautiful. And there's a door over here. Wow. Late 15th, early 16th century, the Italian War, starting with the French invasion of Italy in 1494, began to disrupt the political and economic stability that had fostered the Renaissance. The death of Raphael is often cited as the end of High Renaissance period in art. Sack of Rome by troops of the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V is considered a significant blow to the Renaissance in Italy. Most Italian city states had lost their independence to larger powers like France, Spain, and the Holy Roman Empire. Mid 16th century, the Counter Reformation and the rise of mannerism in art signaled a shift away from Renaissance ideals. Late 16th century argue for a long Renaissance lasting until about 1600. End of Renaissance was gradual rather than abrupt. While Italian political and economic power waned, Renaissance ideas and innovations had already spread throughout Europe. End of Renaissance primarily refers to the decline of the Italian Renaissance. Renaissance influences continued in other parts of Europe. The idea of a clear end to the Renaissance, arguing that it oversimplifies the complex cultural and historical developments of the period. Various dates between 920 and 1600 are cited. Most sources point to the period between 1520 and 1550 as the end of Italian Renaissance with the sack of Rome in 1527, often highlighted as a symbolic endpoint. Okay, okay. Interesting. Interesting. Was Italy, did France have any Renaissance artists during 1400 to 1550? Let's see, because I know there was something with Da Vinci. He was involved. Jean Fouquet, 1420 to 1481, major French painter of the 15th century, traveled to Rome. Okay. Traveled to Rome in the mid 1440s. Okay. Appointed official painter to King Louis XI in 1425, known for miniatures and portraits. Enguerrand Carton, active 1444 to 1466, also known as Charenton, worked in Avignon in southern France, created the large coronation of the Virgin in 1454, considered one of the most important surviving 15th century French paintings. Nicolas Froment worked in southern France, painted to Rennes d'Anjou, known for his triptych paintings. Met de Moali, Moalin, Moalin, active late 15th century, one of the great French painters of the 15th century, known for the triptych Madonna and Child with Angels and Donors in Moulin Cathedral. Jean Baudichon served as official court painter to four successive French kings, likely a pupil of Jean Fouquet, Jean Coulet, Couet, Chloe, Chloe, and Francois Coulet. Father and son, both court painters. Okay. 1480 to 1541, 1510 to 1572, known for their portraits of French royalty and nobility. School of Font- Fontainebleau artists included Italian artists working in France, such as Rosso Fiorentino and Francesco Primaticcio developed a distinctive French Mannerist style. While not as internationally renowned as their Italian counterparts, these French artists made significant contributions to Renaissance art, particularly in painting and illuminated manuscripts. Was Italy the birthplace and epicenter of Renaissance era? Let's see. Origin Florence. Widely accepted to have begun in Florence, Italy in the late 13th and early 14th century, often referred to as birthplace of the Renaissance. Italian figures, early Renaissance thinkers and artists like Dante Alighieri, Francesco Petrarch, and Giotto di Bondone were instrumental in sparking the movement in Florence. Hmm. Spread across Italy. From Florence, the Renaissance spread to major Italian cities and states, including Venice, Genoa, Milan, Rome, and Naples. The wealthy and competitive Italian city states, particularly Florence, became hubs of Renaissance culture, art, and learning. While the early Renaissance began in Florence, the pinnacle of the movement, the High Renaissance, took place in Rome. Italy's central location in Rome and its connection to ancient Roman and Greek cultures made it an ideal birthplace for the Renaissance. The prosperity of Italian cities, particularly Florence, and the patronage of wealthy families like Medici fueled the Renaissance. Many of the most renowned Renaissance artists, such as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Botticelli, lived and worked in Italian cities. Consistently identified as the birthplace and early epicenter. The movement began in 14th century and reached its peak in Italy before spreading to other parts of Europe in 16th. Wow. Look at the city. The city looks like art. The city looks like art. Beautiful. Beautiful. I'm Curious about this? Tell me more about these early Renaissance thinkers and artists: Dante Alighieri, Francesco Petrarch, and Giotto di Bondone. Born and raised in Florence, Dante is considered one of the greatest literary figures in history. His masterpiece, The Divine Comedy, revolutionized literature by being written in the Florentine vernacular, rather than rather than Latin. This work helped establish the modern-day standardized Italian language. Dante's writings influenced subsequent Renaissance writers and artists. Okay, here's Dante's writing, and Dante's talking about divine comedy. Established the modern-day standardized Italian language. Dante's writings influenced subsequent Renaissance writers and artists. Francesco Petrarch, often referred to as the father of the Renaissance. Ooh, so he was also the father of Renaissance. 1304 to 1374. Hmm. Founded a school of thought known as humanism based on ancient texts of Cicero, argued that creativity should be founded on logic and reasoning with humans at the center. Creativity should be founded on logic and reasoning with humans at the center. His work revived interest in ancient Greek and Roman culture. His work revived interest in ancient Greek and Roman culture. I like this guy, Francesco. Argued that creativity should be founded on logic and reasoning with humans at the center. Giotto di Bondone, Florentine painter who explored new levels of realism, form, facial expression in art. His innovation in depicting three-dimensional space and human emotion were groundbreaking for the time. Giotto's work marked a significant departure from the Byzantine style, paving the way for Renaissance art. Cultural revival. These thinkers and artists were instrumental in reviving interest in ancient Greek and Roman culture. Work led to a cultural rebirth or renaissance of ancient art, literature, and philosophy. Dante and Petrarch's use of Italian vernacular in literature helped establish it as a literary language, moving away from Latin. Humanist philosophies placed emphasis on human potential and achievement, a key aspect of Renaissance thought. Giotto's innovation in painting techniques and realism set the stage for future Renaissance artists to build upon. Florence as a center. These figures were all associated with Florence, helping to establish the city as the birthplace of Renaissance. Their combined contribution in literature, philosophy, and art. Literature, philosophy, and art. Literature, philosophy, and art laid the groundwork for the Renaissance movement, sparking a renewed interest in classical learning and human centered thinking that would define the era. Classical learning and human centered thinking. Let's see. Let's see if there's a connection between Donatello and the three figures: philosophy, literature, and art. No direct evidence, however, we can infer some indirect influences. Donatello lived and worked in Florence during the early Renaissance, apparently influenced by the works of Dante, Petrarch, and Giotto. While not directly mentioned, Giotto's innovations in painting, particularly in depicting three-dimensional space and human emotion, likely influenced the broader artistic environment in which Donatello worked. Petrarch's humanist philosophies were influential during the Renaissance. While not explicitly stated, these ideas may have indirectly influenced Donatello's approach to art, particularly in his focus on human forms and emotions. Dante's work, especially the Divine Comedy, had a profound impact on the Italian culture and language, while the poet's influence on Florentine culture was pervasive. Like Dante, Petrarch, and Giotto in their respective fields, Donatello was known for his innovative approaches to sculpture, particularly in his use of perspective and expressive human figures. Worked extensively in Florence, a city closely tied to Dante's legacy. Dante's legacy, okay, about Dan Brown's comments. Interesting. Interesting. So Giotto, who was a painter, died in 1337. So that was um, long before Donatello started. 1304 to 1374. Petrarch was close, and Dante also died. Okay, now I'm curious about the concept of humanism. This is very interesting, and this comes from Petrarch Francesco. Tell me more about humanism by Petrarch. That creativity should be okay. Let's see. Let's see. This is interesting. Founder of humanism. Petrarch is often referred to as the father of humanism, and I believe who was also known as the father of Renaissance. It was Petrarch. So let's see. Let's see. Philosophy has a massive impact because once you kind of lay something down, once you lay something out, you are kind of your idea becomes seeds that are planted into people's minds, and then those people go on to do the real work. So you become kind of the father of Renaissance. Okay, very interesting. Wow. Father of humanism, a philosophical and cultural movement that emerged during the Renaissance, focused on human potential. Humanism placed emphasis on human potential and achievement, moving away from the medieval focus on divine will and religious authority. Humanism placed emphasis on human potential and achievement, moving away from the medieval focus on divine will and religious authority. Very interesting. It's very interesting. This is a cycle where there is a period when people believe in themselves, they believe in the work that they do will change the world. And then slowly it moves on to the other spectrum where you are like, hey, everything is controlled by the God. Let's just believe in God. God will make something happen. And then you have to again remind people that no, you can control the world. So go build, go change the world. So this is a constant cycle. Humanism place emphasis on human potential and achievement, moving away from the medieval focus on divine will and religious authority. Revival of classical learning. Petrarch advocated for a revival of interest in ancient Greek and Roman culture, literature, and philosophy, logic and reasoning. He argued that creativity and intellectual pursuits should be founded on logic and reasoning rather than solely on religious doctrine or medieval scholasticism. Petrarch advocated for a revival of interest in ancient Greek and Roman culture, literature, and philosophy. He argued that creativity and intellectual pursuits should be founded on logic and reasoning rather than solely on religious doctrine or medieval scholasticism. Human centered approach. Petrarch's humanism put humans at the center of intellectual and creative endeavors, emphasizing individual worth and potential. Classical models. He encouraged the study of classical authors, particularly Cicero and Virgil, as models for eloquence, style, and intellectual rigor. Petrarch's writings were among the first to reveal a deep psychological analysis of the human soul, its struggles, and contradictions. Very interesting. Petrarch's writings were among the first to reveal a deep psychological analysis of the human soul, its struggles and contradictions. Critique of medieval thought. He challenged the authority of medieval thinkers. He challenged the authority of medieval thinkers, including Aristotle, advocating for a more critical and independent approach to learning. Petrarch's work emphasized self awareness and introspection, encouraging individuals to examine their own thoughts and experiences. His ideas laid the groundwork for the Renaissance movement, inspiring later thinkers and artists to explore human centered approaches to creativity and knowledge. While valuing classical Latin, Petrarch also wrote in Italian, contributing to the development of literature and making ideas more accessible. His humanism encouraged a broad, interdisciplinary approach to learning, combining elements of literature, philosophy, and history. Francesco Petrarca. Beautiful. I'm happy we found something very interesting. And that's the stream. Perfect.